Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
Happy New Year, Michael. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir, and I hope it's started out well, at least.
Yeah. It's been a few weeks for us. We took a week off. Sorry, everybody. We decided we needed that at the end of the year. We both have. I would say I have a large family. However, I got Michael's.
Not sorry.
I got Michael's Christmas card, and he more than doubles mine. So, actually, wait. Do you? I have 6. No, you don't have. You don't.
I don't.
Kids,
I don't double.
You don't.
No.
Okay, sweet. So you double the kids.
Yep.
But anyway, Happy New Year. It's good to be back. And I just thought, I'm Jonathan. That's Michael. Whoa, sorry, hit the mic. That's Michael right there. Because in case those of you,
I'm Michael versus Mike. There's a Mike and a Michael.
Mike. We got probably quite a few listeners now. I've seen downloads spike up lately. A lot of people seem to get The Lord of the Rings, the Silmarillion, a Tolkien book at Christmas time. And because we're a top search result at theonering.com for a lot of things like maps, for some keywords, Lord of the Rings changes, for some characters, got a lot of these listeners. So thank you for joining us. It's glad to have you here.
Welcome.
I'm glad to have you here. But if you aren't a new listener and you've been here for a while and you like a little bit, you like what we do here, talking about the Lord of the Rings, talking about Peter Jackson's films right now, at least, and then back to J.R. Tolkien's works. Hey, leave us a review at Apple Podcasts, at Spotify, even for both of you who listen on Google Podcasts, because I don't know anybody personal who actually listens on the Google Podcasts app. Leave us a review. 5 stars would be nice. We'd appreciate it.
Did you say both of you that listen on Google Podcasts? There's 2. we
get so many. Dude, there's so many fewer podcasts. It's like it's a magnitude of like 10x less than on Apple.
That is interesting. The disparity.
But speaking of that, in 2023, we did get we just barely broke 100,000 listens in 2023 on the podcast. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
That's just the podcast. I'm not including other videos on YouTube that are involved, right? That's a whole other field of things. That's a lot of extra stuff. So like last year, we don't include like all the Rings of Power videos that we did on YouTube that aren't really the podcast. But 100,000 is great. And then what's also cool is not this episode, but a couple episodes ago, we talked about Tolkien's Noel poem. And we did a video last year with Austin Robertson, who read it, and this poem was lost to the world until 2013, right? Yeah, 2013.
Yes, sir.
Posted it on Twitter. You can see the page. If you just look up like Noel Christmas poem, Noel Tolkien poem, we're the first result on pretty much every search engine right now. But we got 100,000 views on Twitter, which is about 6 times more than we have on
X.
7 times more on X. Sorry, we've got about 100,000 views on that on Twitter when I posted that a week before Christmas.
Sorry, Elon. Sorry.
And then we got like 14,000. We have like 13,000 on YouTube, somewhere around there. But yeah, I mean, that shows like if X just had a good video platform, I'd love to get all the followers and all the shares like on there rather than on YouTube and like separate out like our views. But you just can't monetize. You don't have the reach. You don't have that browsability. All that sort of stuff isn't really there on X yet. So I'm hoping it gets there because the amount of views and shares that this got was tremendous. So thank you all who did listen to that and follow that and give that a like there too. It's just wonderful that many people are listening to Tolkien's poetry that isn't the Lord of the Rings, but is something, dare I say it, even more important in what it says. So 100,000, it's a good number for 2023. Let's break that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll double it this year, but we're shooting for higher numbers.
I'm happy with 50% growth. We can go with 150. Also, we will have the boost of Rings of Power this year, won't we? Isn't it?
I don't know. Is Rings of Power coming out? I've decided not to follow the news lately on that because I really don't give a flubbin.
Yeah, as you can tell, I was hoping you did because I don't really follow it either. But I know it's going to come out at some point, and they're making protest noises over there at Amazon about it. So anyway,
yeah, they haven't. I think the last thing they posted, the actual official account, was like months ago about something. I don't know. Hey, but today, I mean, okay, so
some picture of alternate Sauron came out, like he's going to start shape shifting, so that's their excuse to bring in all kinds of other Saurons. So they're going to have like a whole diversity of Saurons. It's like like a murder of crows, a diversity of Saurons.
I guess, man. Yeah, that wasn't an official Rings of Power show. I'm just wondering if the Rings of Power has if the show has anything on Twitter. I don't know. Anyway, we're not the Lord of the Rings on Prime. Is that it?
Right. Hear that?
All right, I'm going to check real fast, guys. This is super interesting podcast stuff. The last thing that they actually posted that wasn't a retweet was July about the Emmys. That was it. That was in July. So they haven't done anything. So who knows what's going on there? I mean, the strike's been over for months now. So they could theoretically tell us what's going on. I have a feeling that there's going to be some serious reshuffling, even though the DEI is still strong with them.
Sure.
But yeah. Anyway, all right. We're just shooting the breeze here now. Like, okay, guys, we're gonna get into what we need to. Before we do, hey, we do have a members section that's in Discord that you got the extended podcast, which this week we're going to talk about a question from Thomas about spotted toads and Sam and Gandalf, why that wasn't included in the movie. And we're going to talk about the Hobbiton and Bree timeline, because that's one of the changes we get into. Because Jackson left a lot out between Hobbiton and Bree. There's a lot that goes on there. And what's the one thing that we think that he should have left in? So we'll have a discussion about that. But go to theonering.com/members. Oh, let me remove this screen from... There we go. You don't see the Noel anymore. So from Hobbiton to Bree, we're going to talk about that. But you can become a member at theonering.com/members. And just like Harrison and Adam and Lynn, you can give even more than the $4 a month, but the first month is free if you go for that route. Otherwise, we'd appreciate all your support. And even for those of you who don't listen, thanks for listening or watching on YouTube and giving us your eyes and your ears. We do appreciate that very much. All, 2,000 per week of you. So we appreciate that. All right, Michael, we are going to jump into the first change today, which we are calling Let's Meet at the Prancing Pony.
Is it secret? Is it safe?
Where do I go?
Get out of the Shire. Make for the village of Bree. I'll be waiting for you at the Inn of the Prancing Pony.
Okay. This did not happen in the books this way. Now, there are a lot of people who say, but no, Gandalf did say to meet him at Bree. Aha, but no, because that didn't happen until the letter that Frodo got from Barliman and Bodibur from Gandalf that said that he was supposed to forward on to Frodo, and that said, if I can't meet you at either, let me see if I remember it right, Hobbiton or Crick Hollow, I'll meet you at the Bree. You can trust the landlord at the Prancing Pony. You can pass through Bree, right? If I find you gone, leave a message for me here if you pass through Bree. All right, so...
Which was a message Frodo never got while he was in the Shire.
Right.
So in truth, Gandalf, in fact, as I reread the book in preparation for this, there's that whole chapter, Three's Company, which is of course referring to the three hobbits that start the trip out, which are Frodo, Sam, and Pippin. So Merry actually isn't there yet. And they keep referencing the fact that he's waiting for Gandalf to show up. Frodo keeps referencing the fact he's waiting for Gandalf to show up. He's hoping to find Gandalf. So he's clearly not looking for him at the Prancing Pony Inn. He's expecting Gandalf to arrive. And it is a subject of much consternation, in fact, when he talks to the elves, which we will get to in our second video.
Yeah. And so what Gandalf says to Frodo, the last thing he says to Frodo is... Gandalf went off at dawn. I don't remember which chapter this is, but he says, I may be back any day. He said, at the very latest, I shall come back for the farewell party. I think you, after all, may need my company on the road. And then the next day, he went off. And then Frodo was restless and anxious, waiting in vain for the sound of Gandalf. This is before Frodo leaves, the night before Frodo leaves. He decided to wait until nightfall. After that, if Gandalf wanted him urgently, he would go to Crick Hollow and might even get there first. So Frodo was completely under the assumption that Gandalf was going to meet him way before Bree. There was no
he was going to accompany him out of the furthest extents of the Shire, at least. Like he wasn't going to be on the road outside of the Shire without Gandalf. That was Frodo's
Yeah, it's
impression.
essentially what Gandalf told him. He's like, "Hey, I'll be there."
Right.
But that doesn't happen. So what happens then is between the movie and the books, right? The timeline is there's so much that happens between Hobbiton and Bree. So I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to go through the four things that and these are generalizations, right? Obviously, you can go through the minute details of this, but here are the four things that happen. So in the movie timeline, Gandalf leaves that we saw, and he tells them to go to the Prancing Pony, or tells Frodo and Sam to go to the Prancing Pony. Well, Frodo at that point. So Frodo and Sam leave, and then they encounter Merry and Pippin and a Black Rider, and then they get to the Prancing Pony. That's pretty much it.
Well, they run from the Black Riders.
They run from the Black Riders, right? And if we were to
cross the Brandywine,
yeah, but that's from Merry and Pippin, hitting Merry and Pippin, seeing the Black Rider, they start running. That's essentially one scene where they evade the Black Riders and then get to the Buckleberry Ferry and to Bree, right? So that's like one scene almost. They go and compress it all together. Now, I guess also you'd say that after Frodo and Sam leave in the extended edition, they also encounter the elves leaving. They see that too. So that's a short event, but that does happen.
Right. Really brief, almost no mention, but yeah.
So in the book timeline, Gandalf leaves. He says, I may be back any day. And then after that, Frodo and Sam and Pippin leave for Crick Hollow together. They encounter a Black Rider. After they encounter the Black Rider, they meet Gildor and Glorian, which we'll go over in the next change. After that, they meet Farmer Maggot. And then they get to Crick Hollow. They leave Crick Hollow with Merry. Then they get to the Old Forest, and they escape Old Man Willow and meet Tom Bombadil. Then they escape the Barrow Downs, and then they finally get to the Prancing Pony. So there's a lot of other events that happen that establish this whole world outside of just the Black Riders chasing them. I mean, you've got Tom Bombadil, you've got Old Man Willow, you've got the changes at Crick Hollow, you've got the horns of the Hobbit horns sounding.
The horn horn of Buckland.
Yeah, the horn of Buckland. Thank you. And so there's a lot that goes on. We'll go over one change that we wish they would have left in the extended edition at thewondering.com/members. So all right, so there you go. That's all the changes. That's a huge change for Gandalf just to say, I'm gonna go meet me at Bree, and we're just gonna skip all that.
Right. Oh. And to be more specific, or be a little more specific, literally what the movies did here, this is one of the biggest changes in they cut out 6 chapters out of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's huge.
So they basically, I mean, there's some differences like we talked about, like Pippin goes with Sam and Frodo, but they basically cut out chapters 3 through 8 of the Fellowship of the Ring. So and because chapter 9 starts at the sign of the Prancing Pony. So when it introduces Bree Town and we see them arrive. So tons of things happen, tons of characters that we never see in the movies at all. And it really is one of the most core changes that Jackson makes to just chop 6 chapters out of the book.
Yeah. It's I mean, I knew this was coming when I saw the films, but it still disappointed me about how much was left out. So much of book 1 of 6 in Lord of the Rings was just chopped. Right. And that makes me sad. All right, so let's talk about it. So is it lore friendly? Well, I think that's a pretty easy answer for me. The answer is no, it's not lore friendly to remove so many of the things that Tolkien put in there.
Right. Yeah. To be clear, Fellowship of the Ring is split into 2 books. And to emphasize my previous point, the first book, which goes all the way up to Rivendell, has 12 chapters in it. So that means that Peter Jackson literally cut half of book 1 out in this jump. So Jeez. No. Heck,
who is this chump they got to make these movies? Goodness, man.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, that's, I mean, when you make a change that drastic, that's a no for me. All right. So, how much do we like the change, or does the change make it for better cinema? Sorry, it's been a couple weeks since I've done this. Does the change make for better cinema? You go first, Michael. What say you?
I say no. Now, there's one caveat to this, but it doesn't change my answer, which is still going to be no. But I will say it, which is I understand that when you're cutting for a cinema length movie, he's going to have to chop something, and he chopped some things which he found to be, he and Fran and Philippa found to be jarring, like Tom Bombadil and things like that. But a bunch of the other stuff wasn't at all jarring. It was actually enriching and we'll talk more about it in our next video about one of those episodes, which is the encounter with the elves. But it's simply, so I understand you can make an efficiency argument, like for time purposes, something had to be cut. Okay, so that means you cut 6 chapters out of half of the first book of the 2 books of the Fellowship. And that, to me, you can't argue that makes for better cinema ultimately. Now, if he had just cut Tom Bombadil, I might have seen it my way to a yes. But there were so many things in the list that you gave. Right. I have to say,
no. I think so too. And it also, it shrinks the world a lot. It shrinks that whole area. It feels like there's just Hobbiton and Bree, and that's it.
Correct.
And there's so much more, and there's so many more hobbits outside of Hobbiton. It's not just like the Harfoots traveling. It's not these one band of people.
So much to say. You are so right. Cutting the elves is massive. Cutting Farmer Maggot, which helps you understand the character of the hobbits better. Like Farmer Maggot is one of the most virtuous characters of the book of the Fellowship of the Ring. He's amazing. He's a family man. He's like, I love Farmer. He's my spirit animal, Farmer Maggot. Cutting out the all of the Buckland, the old forest, Old Man Willow. You lose all the richness of all the
Fatty Bolger.
And Fatty Bulger's the funny one, right? Because my kids always laugh when I read the part about Fatty Bulger. And then cutting Bombadil, but the enrichment of the world. You cut the whole part of the Barrow Downs, like the lead up to the Witch King going down starts in the Barrow Downs. It starts with the blades of the Barrow Downs that the hobbits get, which we have no reference for whatsoever. It's one of the more beautiful payoffs. Like literally, these are blades forged by men who've been fighting the Witch King centuries ago. They lost, and the blades were buried with them, only to be found by the hobbits and then subsequently used by one of the hobbits to help slay the Witch King.
Yeah, removing that is one of those things that on a second read through, you're like, oh, that's so cool, right? You read it through and you realize that's the blade. That now I didn't remember that the first time. Now I remember where they got it. It's one of those things that you go through and really.
It's so cool because it's a defeated people. Like the history of the fall of Cardolan is sad. I mean, just terrible. Like the Witch King, the ravages that he accomplishes centuries ago, destroying the kingdoms of the north of the Dunedain is stunning. Anyway, it's not better.
So let's talk real fast then about what does it change Gandalf at all by making him by doing this at all? I don't see how it does necessarily because they essentially take.
I don't think it changes.
So it's not
Gandalf,
a Gandalf thing. It's everything else. It's his mechanism for shortening everything by having Gandalf say to Frodo what Barliman forgot to send to Frodo, essentially.
Right. The let's meet at the Prancing Pony is that's our short version of let's skip 6 chapters of Fellowship of the Ring.
So essentially what he did, now that I think about it, this thought just came to me, is that he said, no, we won't have a letter. We're just going to make Gandalf actually say the letter to Frodo. And so I'm changing the plot of the storyline by essentially giving Frodo the letter already.
Right. Exactly.
Doing this.
Exactly.
So, okay. All right. So how much do we like the change? I don't like this change at all. Man, is that too high? I'm going to go 1.3 on this one. I just feel like a lot of the little things were left out. And granted, I know it's a longer movie, but I certainly think that some of this would have been lovely to have left in. I don't even think they filmed anything from this. They knew right away they weren't going to do any of these items in here. I don't believe there was a Farmer Maggot other than you've been in Maggot's crops again.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a low number for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I will not give a 1 to things where they're just cutting and they're not warping to be opposite of Tolkien. So I'll give this a 1.8 because it's in the 1 range, but it's not warping Tolkien. It's just you're missing so much by cutting this out that I have to go pretty low.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like it does change the world by cutting out so much, though. I mean, it's you can say I cut out half the book, and then you have changed enough, and he cut out half the book of that first
Right,
book,
but
and
it's the difference between being found by Arwen and feminist Arwen and Glorfindel. That's
yeah,
a warping of Tolkien's character. The
yeah,
feminist
right.
mocking Aragorn by sneaking up on him and putting a sword to his throat, which
Yeah.
is like the opposite of what an elf
Well,
maid would do. So
yeah, unlike the Middle Earth Mixer and John Carswell from Tolkien Road podcast, who've been on this with us, they're readily handing out 1s and 5s. I'm saving my 1 for my low 1 for
yeah,
the really egregious ones. So,
yep.
all right, there you go. Let's meet at the Prancing Pony. Bad decision, Peter. Bad decision. Let's jump into the next one. This one we call A Glimpse of Gildor.
They're going to the harbor beyond the White Towers. To the Grey Havens. I don't know why. It makes me sad.
And they always sing too. Apparently, they're always singing. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be the soundtrack or them singing there, but it kind of felt like them singing because of how it. In any case, I'm going to read to you guys the difference that Tolkien had in the books, particularly when it comes to Frodo and Sam meeting the elves on the way. This is after they've encountered the Nazgul, and they found the Nazgul like sniffing on the road, and that freaked them out.
Twice.
The second time, yeah. This is after
they encounter the Nazgul twice, and the Nazgul is crawling towards them on the road, sniffing. This time, and the elves scare the Nazgul away.
Yeah, and so here's what Tolkien wrote: the hobbits sat in shadow by the wayside. Before long, the elves came down the lane towards the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see the starlight glimmering on their hair and in their eyes. They bore no lights, yet as they walked, a shimmer like the light of the moon above the rim of the hills before it rises seemed to fall about their feet. They were now silent, and as the last elf passed, he turned and looked toward the hobbits and laughed. And then another quote: I am Gildor, answered their leader, the elf who had first hailed him, Gildor and Glorian of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we, too, are now only tarrying here a while ere we return over the great sea. All right, before you jump into this, because I know, Michael, you have a lot to say about this here. I left this out of the part I edited, the little bit I edited here. We're Tolkien, where Frodo says, Sam, wood elves. I'm like, they're not wood elves. What? Tolkien never even used the word wood elves. They used the word Sylvan, but not wood elves. And it just that was one of the things that also broke me in the.
Well, he does use the word wood elves in The Hobbit, I believe, but
does he?
Anyway?
But
yeah,
I've read the Silmarillion and the others too much lately. I don't go back to the Hobbit.
Yeah, I don't.
However, they're not wood elves. They're like he says right here, we are exiles, which means they're exiled from Valinor, and they're on their way back.
Well, literally, Frodo in the book says literally, the song ended, "These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth," said Frodo in amazement. so this is after he hears them singing. So literally they're high elves, which to me is always funny. It's like, why don't you just say high elves? Like why does it need to be wood elves? I don't understand the change.
Right, yeah. I don't either.
But anyway, I will give credit, before we launch into some of the things that are left out by cutting out the elves, because what happens here is they don't just see them. So just to be clear to our listeners, in the movies or in the extended edition,
I was just gonna say, make sure this is only the extended edition, right?
Only the extended edition. In the cinematic version, no elves at all. In the extended edition, this short scene, which they identify them as wood elves, not true, and that's it. Having said that, I will give them, because you read the passage about the visual effect the elves have with the starlight glimmering in the moonlight. I thought the visuals were quite nice in the extended edition. I thought that was pretty cool. So no problem with that at all. Big problem is, even in the extended edition, that's all we get. Whereas in the books, there are literally 7 pages of an encounter between the 3 hobbits. That's not just Sam and Frodo, but Sam, Frodo, and Pippin. And Pippin puts his foot in his mouth continually throughout the encounter. And the three hobbits and Gildor, Inglorian, and his fellow high elves. So many cool things to be said about that, which we're going to launch into. But that's the basics. Cinematic version, no elves at all. Extended edition, brief glimpse, wrongly identified as wood elves, but nice visuals. Book has a 7-page encounter where the hobbits actually travel with the elves and spend, an evening and sleep in one of the elves' little secret hideaways, wood halls in Woodhall, a hall of the woods in the Hobbit region called Woodhall, which is between Tuckborough and the Marish, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, but before the river.
I wonder if when Tolkien wrote this part of the Lord of the Rings, if this came early in his writing of it, if he was like, "Oh, I can make my elves the real elves now, not the dancing happy elves from the Hobbit," because they weren't really in the world of Middle Earth in a sense yet. He hadn't.
Well, I do see the balance, right? So, but remember, you just read the first thing that the communication that happens between the elves and the three hobbits in the books is Gildor laughing. So he starts by laughing. So they still have and there's quite a bit of laughter in the 7 pages of dialogue between the elves. Like the elves find the hobbits very amusing, even though some of the subject matter that Gildor talks with Frodo about is very serious, which we're going to talk about. So should we launch in or to the differences?
Yes,
and
go for it.
What was missed? Okay, so basically, Gildor, upon hearing that a Black Rider had been scared away, invites the three hobbits to go with them, and so they travel all day and into the night, and all the night, I should say, because they're starting out at night, and then they eat in Woodhall. There's a couple quotes that I wanted to read from this, which I think is really important because it shows what was missed and the importance of what was missed. The first one is about Sam, and it says, after it's talking about the encounter of them eating with the elves and listening to them talk and sing, Sam could never describe in words nor picture clearly to himself what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the chief events of his life. The nearest he ever got was to say, "Well, sir, if I could grow apples like that, I would call myself a gardener. But it was the singing that went to my heart, if you know what I mean." So we have here, according to Tolkien, one of the chief events of Sam's life, which Jackson cuts out entirely by leaving this out. And also, I would say he misses the opportunity to give us a glimpse into the place that high elves have. I mean, obviously, those of us that love the Silmarillion know all about Finrod, like Gildor saying that he's of the House of Finrod, conjures up all these historical facts of the tragedy of the Silmarillion and the House of Finrod, and so there's pretty awesome stuff there. Gildor is the first one. He's a very Gandalf-like figure. He has the wisdom of Gandalf, and he says something. He references the fact that the hobbits, that the meeting of the hobbits and the elves is, well, I'll read the quote. He says, "In this meeting there may be more than chance," is the quote. So he references basically Iluvatar's will, which is in a subtle way. So he's like a Gandalf figure that way. He won't tell Frodo what the Black Riders are, and Frodo keeps pressing him and Frodo's saying things like, Frodo reminded me of my kids, actually, because sometimes when an adult topic will come up, which is beyond their maturity level and not appropriate for my wife and I to talk to them about at that point in their life, but they've heard about it and they're asking like, but what about this? What about this? I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you all the details now. Here, it's enough for you to know, avoid this. And that's what Gildor says to the hobbits about the Black Riders. Just avoid them. They're servants of the enemy. Avoid them. And Frodo even says things like, my kids will say, like, you're making me more scared by not knowing than like, how am I supposed to keep my hope up?
Right. Yeah.
And Gildor does that very interesting thing, which an adult does with an immature child or teenager, which is his relationship to Frodo, which he says essentially he shows his wisdom by not speaking. He says, if Gandalf hasn't told you, then I'm not going to tell you. But here's good advice. And of course he provides them with protection all through the night of their company into the halfway to where they're going in halfway to Buckland. so there's a lot. He also names them elf friend at the end and says that he's gonna tell all the other quote wandering companies about them, which are presumably the other elves. So one wonders if perhaps that was one of the ways in which Glorfindel found out about the journey. I mean, who knows? I don't think it says how Glorfindel, and Elrond first learned about all this. Maybe it was just Gandalf in passing, but anyway, it's interesting to me that Gildor brings this up and then disappears from the books entirely. We never see Gildor again, which to my mind is probably one of the reasons why he was cut and from the movies, because it was something easy to do. But I think, like we said before, you lose out a lot of that depth of Tolkien's world, the relationship to the elves, the position they play in the world, their power, like the Nazgul are afraid of them. That's incredible. We've never encountered anything that Nazgul aren't afraid of Aragorn. They aren't afraid of the only people they appear to be afraid of are high elves. They're not afraid of Gandalf. They attacked Gandalf, but they flee from high elves. We have two instances of that. One is this, and with Gildor, and the other is Glorfindel.
They've heard the stories of Fingolfin.
Right. Right. Exactly. So anyway, There's my rant.
Wow. Well, then let's start with you then, Michael. Do you think, as you did, is it lore friendly to do what they did?
No, it's not. No. Not lore friendly to cut out the elves. I think you miss a big chunk. It's I'm going to make a distinction here. It's not lore friendly by omission, not by commission. So it's not lore unfriendly because they've warped the lore. They've just cut out so much of the lore. And so yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna say yes, and here's why. The theatrical edition completely omitted it. Completely, they were like, "Oh, the elves not leaving." Like, and then when we saw the extended edition, they're like, "Oh, at least we've got the elves leaving." Wood elves still bothered me, but leaving Middle Earth, right? At least we've got that. And because in the same way that Tom Bombadil kind of comes and goes right away, although the Barrow Downs would have been really nice. I wish that would have been there. I would say it's not compared to what we did in the last change, where they cut out 6 chapters, and this being part of those here. But there was so much there. This here, I think they can get away with and not lose the lore by just omitting this part of it.
Okay. Fair enough. I understand why you answered.
All right. So does the change make for better cinema? Okay, let me do a caveat. So I'm going to have to talk this through. If this were a TV show where we could do all these changes, we had more time, I think it would work. I mean, I'm not against the 5-hour cut of the Fellowship of the Ring if it comes to that. So here's the question: does it make for better cinema for me? Yes. Does it make for better cinema for everybody else? Probably not. By adding and by removing, where it does make for better cinema by removing. You
just reverse the question, right?
Sorry. Yes. Does it make for better cinema for me by removing it? No, but it doesn't make for better cinema for everyone else by removing it. Yes. Because people will be wondering, who's this Gildor guy, and why did we spend such a short amount of time with him, and why is he so important that we spent this time with him, and now he's no longer in the film at all? Unless they would have brought him to Helm's Deep, they could have done that.
And then killed him like they killed Haldor.
That's right. I just started to think, how do they bring him back? They can't really, because he's on his way out. So
can't. So I understand your answer, and in a rare instance, we are going to be at odds both times here. I think it does not make for better cinema. Here's why. I take this question perhaps in a slightly different way from you. I don't. Yeah. I'm not asking, when I say answer this question, I don't mean. I don't start with the presumption you have 3 hours to fit everything from Lord of the Ring, from Fellowship of the Ring into that 3 hours. So does the fact that you left this out make it better cinema? In that specific, very twisted way of asking the question, yeah, sure, it makes for better cinema. But I think the larger question, when I answer this question about changes, what I'm thinking is, does the nature of the change make for better cinema for the viewing audience? because there are some things that are better
No,
suited
I get
to
that.
cinema. And in that
Right.
sense, I say no, because I don't put limits on the length of movie that there could be within certain reason. But I do think that just this element being left out leaves a lot. Like, they could have done a shortened version. They didn't have to do the full 7 pages of dialogue and travels. They could have done, a minute and a half of
Yeah.
cuts of them travel and a few Gildor and Frodo speaking and saying a few things, and then showing them eating and falling asleep in Woodhall, and that's it. So I think it would have been worth a couple minutes of cinema to put the elves in.
Yeah. I mean, I could easily have gone to no on this here too. Even if it was a short amount of time, I don't know the science of cinema. And so I'm making some educated guesses here on what I think it would
Yep.
require. And if you added all these small characters in short,
Mm-hmm.
in
You would
short
have
bits,
a 6-hour movie. Got it. Don't care. I'm looking at one change at a time, and each change.
No,
and
I
like,
wasn't going to
if you have
say
to have a
it's
6-hour
hey,
movie,
I wasn't going to say it's a 6-hour movie. I was going to say it's too many characters to imbibe in a 6-hour or 4-hour or 5-hour or 9-hour time frame unless you give it the right amount of time. And I think if you at some point you got to say, like, does it make for better cinema? Are we going to have 6 films for the Lord of the Rings? Maybe, but that's not what Peter Jackson did. Did it make for his movie to be a little bit better? That's the way that I look at it. Yes, it probably did by removing it, but we're looking at it slightly differently. But I could have easily said no too. I would have liked to have seen him personally.
Perhaps I love the High Elves too much, so I'm sticking with my no.
All right, so you're such a top 1%er there of those High Elves. Okay, so let's talk about then the change. How much do you like the change? It didn't, it almost bothered me more that they said wood elves. Because that's just clearly wrong.
But that's not what we're talking about here, right?
No, I know, but that was added, and they added the wood elves. So I'm just going to go straight down the middle with this. I'm going to go 2.5, and say that's it. It didn't bother me a ton. I wish I would have left it in, but I can accept it without it.
Yeah, I don't like the change, and I have the exact same score as the last one for the exact same reason. You're cutting out content that adds to the richness of the world. And,
is it a 1.8?
Yes, sir. And so 1.8 is my answer, because I think that those things, like the Barrow Downs and like the High Elves, Gildor's folk, really enriches people's experience about what the world is like and what Tolkien's world is like. So don't like it. It's an omission. So 1.8.
1.8. All right. Yeah, you can be wrong every once in a while. All right, guys. There you go. That's a glimpse of Gildor. We both, well, when it comes down to it, I mean, come on, we both wish we would have gotten a lot more Gildor in this, regardless.
Yes, sir.
And
would have been nice.
Maybe one day we will. Hey, like you mentioned, I think it was in the last episode. Was it? Mickey Mouse is now in public domain, at least the Steamboat Willie version. It will be maybe in our lifetime that the Lord of the Rings comes into, or the Hobbit comes into public domain, and we'll see a better version of that. Or probably a lot of worse versions too. Yeah, as we felt like today, the news article comes out. Like, one of the first things that's happening is they're turning Steamboat Willie into a horror movie. Some guys, of course, because that's the cheapest thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they did that with Winnie the Pooh too. So,
yes,
hey, before we sign off, I do want to do one thing we haven't done in a while, and that's
If You Like Tolkien.
Sweet.
Wow, which is this right here. If you see, I did it backwards.
Whoa,
right there. This is, does it even say? Pictures by J.R. Tolkien. This is a book that you can get, that my wife got for me for Christmas, and these are just pictures of J.R. Tolkien. And so, if I take
I'm just a second.
Take this out. What Michael's stepping away. For those of you listening, Michael has stepped away from the chair and left me alone here to shoot the breeze for a while. And so you can see there are pictures of J.R.R. Tolkien. There were a few in here that I hadn't really seen. Do you have that too? Do you get that for Christmas too? No way. Oh, what? You got that too?
Got the same thing last year for me. So I got this one last year. So what's funny is we did not coordinate our If You Like Tolkien. This is just Jonathan.
If You Like Tolkien.
See?
There it is.
You like it too. We both. I so I did want to feature a few that I really wasn't familiar with as much. There are a lot of them from The Hobbit that a lot of us have seen. There are some of his crests, some even just designs like on newspaper, on crosswords that they put in, like where he just was doodling. So it's not just pictures by Tolkien, it's doodles by Tolkien too. First one is and so they had a guy, Christopher Tolkien had a guy named, let me get his name here, H.E. Ridditt, who colorized a lot of these here. So the colorized versions were from Tolkien's inkings or pencil drawings. And so this version here, which you can see is Gondolin. We got that right there, which has been colorized. The original one is here. It's very dim, so they took it, they improved it, but it's still Tolkien's vision of it. And the colors are similar to some of Tolkien's paintings. I really enjoy this one, particularly because it reflects a lot of my favorite ones that like Ted Naismith did with Gondolin there too. Okay, another one that I'd never seen before was this drawing of Tol Sirion. There.
I like that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
That one's really great. Never come across that before. So to see that in person after having read through the Silmarillion and gone through all that was great. And a lot of these he did in the late 20s. That was sort of his golden period of like of making sketchings for the Silmarillion. Was that it? I lost my oh, here it is. Sorry. Found it. Okay. The other coolest one that I found, maybe you like this one too, Michael, is this drawing. This is in a where he was writing the Two Towers. He drew Shelob's lair inside the paper. That's not the margin. Inside a quarter of the page when he was writing the Two Towers. Awesome. So and there's and you can see there's information about each picture on the side on the opposing page too. So I recommend this. This is a lot of fun. It's sort of with a case. It's kind of a little coffee table book too. And you can just put it.
And I had some of these like in the early printings growing up. Some of my house's many copies of Lord of the Rings. We went through a lot of them because they got beaten up. So I saw a lot of these as cover art for some of the 1970s and 80s versions that came out. But to reference something really quick, that you mentioned already, but I thought was just like, this shows the really fertile imagination that Tolkien has, that he would not only create this world, but he's like, and now I'm going to doodle and create Numenorian textiles.
Yeah,
so
right. Yes.
It's like William Morris. Okay. So now we're going to go into the world of, domestic artwork and that's where like his mind went everywhere when it came to creating a world, which I just think is fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's obviously you're not going to sit for hours reading it, but it's great to just go through and be like, wow, this he wasn't just writing, he wasn't copying anybody else. This was, like you said, the fertile imagination. The growth was always there. It never stopped. It was always changing. It was always something new. And in the 20s, maybe his kids were young. He was stuck caring for them at times, and so maybe this is where his mind went. And when he started doodling, he couldn't write, so he would draw. And certainly some beautiful ones in there, and then some wonderful textiles that you can have printed and put on the tiling in your bathroom if you really enjoy it that much. I'll put a link below.
I'm waiting for the public domain to end for that reason. I'm going to design a whole textile line.
That's right.
Because he has all the heraldics,
Tolkien textiles,
all the heraldry of the elves as well, and which I frequently use. Simplified versions of for my online icons for my name, especially the House of Fingolfin, because his heraldic symbol is my favorite. Oh, he's my favorite, so therefore his heraldic symbol is. But anyway, it's cool.
Maybe we should buy the domain name Tolkien Textiles. Just
there you go.
There you go. Buy that one too. Yeah, it is available. If anybody wants to buy it and give it to us, then we'll create a website for Tolkien Textiles, and then we'll be sued by the Tolkien estate, and they'll take it from us.
That's right. We'll have our own Etsy page that they can come after. And, yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This was a fun one. More disagreement in this one than before, but that's what you get sometimes. We may do another one of these episodes coming up. We're trying to get a third wheel into our reading of a book from the Unfinished Tales. So we're moving towards that. And so we'll keep doing these changes up until we get all that worked out. And if you do like what you're hearing, please, once again, go to theonering.com/members, become a member. we really appreciate your support, and even just your listens. And if you can't support us with the $4, support us with a 5-star. We'd really appreciate that too. As we get more and more listeners and more folks engaging with us, it's a lot of fun. So join us there. We're going to jump into our extended edition, which you will get only if you become a member. So make sure you do that. We'll talk about the question about spotted toads, and then go into what should Peter Jackson really, if we could cut it down to one thing in that list of items that Peter Jackson left out on the road from Hobbiton to Bree, what should he have left? We'll get into that, and we'll see you on the other side.
So for the first time in 2024, goodbye, freeloaders.